Welcome to Ghostly.
Is the Myrtles Plantation haunted?
Ghostly is a podcast that comes out every other week. In each episode, we take a ghost story or paranormal event and look into its complete history. Rebecca then gives us evidence proving that the story is real, and my job is to debate those pieces of evidence and get you, the listener, prepared to vote on if it's real or not. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button, and we're your host.
Yeah, I'm Rebecca, and he's Pat.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, oh my God. Today, we'll be talking about the Myrtles Plantation house in Louisiana.
Yes.
We are recording this episode on Juneteenth. The date, June 19th, 1865, refers to the day when the last enslaved African Americans learned of their emancipation, which was almost 6 months after Congress passed the 13th Amendment, which, as you know, abolished slavery.
Yes.
Seems the slave owners didn't want to let their slaves know the news.
Yeah, I guess they
just
let
forgot.
it take its sweet time.
No, they just forgot, I'm sure. You know, they probably meant to tell them, right?
I would say no.
Yeah. So here is what the amendment says about slavery.
Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction.
So there is a form of slavery that's allowed if you are convicted of a crime.
We can put you in jail.
Yeah, we could. Well, I mean,
and make you work.
Yeah, make you work. That's pretty much what it is. So, to be fair,
you know, that's still a thing. But anyways, we won't worry about that one today.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair, as white people, we are probably the least likely people to be experts on slavery.
This is true.
Juneteenth is a celebration for the black people of the U.S., and I think that it should be a day that we remember the wrongs done by racial injustice as white people.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it seems weird to say celebrate, though, of course, it is something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I think also as white people, it's a good time for us to do what we can to help black people. And part of that is, you know, teaching history and helping out as much as we can.
Yeah.
And being as supportive as possible.
So yeah, we picked this episode specifically for this particular thing. You know, I was hoping that it would shed some light on the mistreatment, but in the history section, you won't hear much about the horrific nature of slavery. It's only because slave owners rarely kept documents of their inhumane treatment. You know, it's probably something, you know, I mean, I think that they knew that they were doing wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But they were like, so, I mean, because if not, they would just be like, you know, whipped person today or whatever, you know, it would just be like something that they would document, right?
Yeah.
But even if the slaves were treated in the most humane way possible, which is highly unlikely, the idea of buying someone and forcing them to work for you without any wages and without the possibility to provide a better life for their families, if they were even allowed to be with their families, that's just wrong on every level.
Yes.
So, nevertheless, or probably caused from inhumane treatment, Myrtles Plantation is known as being one of the most haunted locations in the U.S. and possibly the world.
Yeah, there are articles that will say it's the most haunted house in the world. I'm not sure if I will go that far, but it's certainly up there. And, you know, it is interesting we'll talk about this when we get to the history, but the lack of history when it comes to some of the, specifically for this plantation, you know, it can be difficult.
Yeah.
To find.
And I will say that there's a lot of legend that isn't backed up by anything. So.
Oh, yeah. When we get to the ghost part,
yeah.
There's going to be the like story that gets told.
Yeah.
And then
what
I say is fact.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the part where we would usually give shout outs on Ghostly. The first way is to give us a review on Apple Podcast. As we always say, we prefer those 5-star reviews, but don't feel like you have to. We will read any and all reviews that we receive. And the second way is to become a member on Patreon. Just go to ghostlypodcast.com and click on Patreon in the menu bar. And we have a few different tiers to choose from, various different levels, and all of them get you something.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say, so our most recent Patreon episode, our Ghostly X, was super fun.
Yeah.
We do interviews, and we try to have fun with news stories and all of that, but we kind of started a new tradition, and I don't know exactly how it's going to fit in Ghostly X going forward, but we played some games. Like
some paranormal-based
games. Like
games that you would play, but not typically paranormal. We turned them into paranormal.
We made them paranormal,
games.
like Rebecca Ghost Story Mad Lib.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
I laughed very, very hard at that. And,
Bob was to be at fault for that. Spoiler alert.
Well, always, yeah. We a lot of would you rather, or just lots of fun stuff. We have a good time over there. Kind of get to know us a little better, and know our guests a little bit better in the world of the paranormal. So definitely go check us out. Ghostlypodcast.com. Click on Patreon and check out those tiers.
Yeah, we did it for a few reasons, but one of the reasons was to celebrate my birthday. And it was a lot of fun. We recorded it right on my birthday. It was a lot of fun. But sadly, we do not have any shout outs to give.
No, not this episode, but definitely go give us a review. Check us out on Patreon, and you could be our next shout out.
Absolutely.
All right, so I've got some listener mail.
Okay.
So this is from Damon, and he actually posted about this on Facebook back at the end of March. There's a post he put up with a picture.
Wait, you mean people are still on Facebook?
Yeah, this is on our Facebook group called Ghostly Society.
Oh, yeah.
So if you are on Facebook, or even if you don't go there often, go join Ghostly Society.
That is a lot
of fun there. It's a good place. So Damon says, my wife and I moved into our home in March of 2020. We've both experienced paranormal occurrences since then, but one thing has piqued our curiosity. We have a small, pitch black, ball-shaped entity that moves very fast across our kitchen floor. My wife was the first one to notice it. She would randomly stare at the kitchen floor from the living room, and I would ask her what was going on. She would tell me that she sees something move very quickly across the floor in the kitchen. It would happen randomly, and I always went to check and see what I could find. Nothing would be in the area. One morning, I got up for work and headed to the bathroom, which is off of the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I set my clothes down, and I noticed something when I turned around. I saw a small, black, ball-shaped entity quickly roll across the floor. It went into the side of the kitchen cabinet where it disappeared. I would have thought it was a mouse if it wasn't for the squelching sound it made as it moved. My wife has seen it again since then. This time it bounced out of our bedroom and disappeared as it hit our front door.
Wow.
So,
yeah, thank you so much, Damon. If the pandemic wasn't scary enough, I mean, you move into a new place in March of 2020. Wow.
Wow. Right? Get to know your new home.
Exactly. You really get to know your new home. We always want to hear your stories. To send us a story, you can email us at info@ghostlypodcast.com or use the contact us form on ghostlypodcast.com. And one of our favorite ways is to get a ghost story in the actual mail, which hasn't happened for some time now. You can just send it with like one of those stamps, right? You have to put stamp on it. Or postcard is even fine, right? Still need to put a stamp on it, but it's less money. P.O. Box number 264, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. And as always, you're probably not going to write that down when you hear it. So just go to ghostlypodcast.com, scroll to the bottom, and it's all in the footer.
Absolutely. And, if you have had a similar black ball entity in your home, please let us know, and we can We can share that with Damon.
I had a black ball situation, but it was dressed in all white.
So it was a white ball?
Yeah. No, it was a black ball dressed in white.
Oh.
It had a white dress on it.
It was a lady in white?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. You ready for polls?
Am I ever ready for polls, Rebecca?
I mean, you should be. You won a lot of polls.
Not the last one or two.
Yeah, but before that, you had a big streak.
All right. Rip the Band-Aid off, Rebecca.
All right.
Come on.
In our last episode, we talked about Airedale Asylum in Australia. Australia. I don't know. I can kind of do the accent.
It's Australia. It's Foster.
Right. That's all I can think of. Okay. Yes, 59.1% and no, 40.9%. I thought for sure you were going to win. You were ahead for a little while.
Ahead. Yeah, I was ahead in the beginning. This was actually a lot closer than you guys would probably think. Although the last couple of days we've had, a few yes votes that have swung your way.
Came out.
But after the first week, it was looking like I was up by like 80% too. So, but
skeptics vote early.
Yeah.
Believers come in late.
Yeah, you guys are late to the party. The overall rating, so people can vote on how haunted they believe something is. 1 being not haunted at all, 10 being the most haunted place ever, just like we do here, except you can't give a 0 or an infinity plus.
A square root of something. I don't
know. So the overall rating was 5, even.
Okay. So the rating was kind of in the middle. But
but that's kind of high
still. Kind of high still. Yeah, it is. All right. So Airedale, check. Haunted. All right. I have got a ghost story for us, too.
It's time for a spooky tale from Rebecca.
It happened again last night. I came in this morning to another report of guests leaving in the middle of the night. No explanation, just we have to go. I remember when I started as a guest services supervisor at Myrtles Plantation, the previous supervisor told me that about once a month, someone leaves. And to not take it too personally or worry too much about it, the owners are used to it. Besides, they rarely ask for any money back. But they sure are scared of something. One tour guide, who has been here a long time, told me about what happened when they filmed a movie here years ago. They moved the furniture around in one room to set up for a shot. Then they all went to lunch, and when they came back, the room was back to where it was originally. They were super upset, thinking some staff at the plantation played a joke. But after it happened a second time, they just filmed what they could and left. One guest told me that she felt something tickle her feet while she was in bed. She said it felt like the presence of a child playing a game. She also heard giggling. She's not the only one to tell me these stories. Another group told me once they stayed up late, downstairs, playing cards, just hanging out. All of a sudden, they heard the piano from the other room playing the same chord over and over and over again. At first, they thought it was just a kid having fun. But then it started to get annoying, and they wondered if this kid was out without a parent, and it was pretty late. So 2 of them went to look. And the second they walked into the room, the playing stopped. No one was there. It had been playing up to the very moment they turned the corner. Now, I haven't seen much myself. Sure, sometimes I think I see a shadow out of the corner of my eye, and sometimes I feel like a hand on my leg, And sometimes I also think I hear the laughter of children, even when there's none here. Okay, maybe I have had some experiences, but maybe because it's during the day, I find them more funny or annoying than threatening. I think most guests do too, but every so often, those ghosts go too far in quote unquote playing with a guest, and then we lose another one to the night. Certainly makes for an interesting workplace.
Wow, that was really spooky. But what are you saying that people get killed there?
No, they leave.
Oh, they leave. Okay. Like
Yeah.
when you say we lost another one.
Well, I said they don't. There's no explanation. Just we have to go. Like they're
Okay.
like, we got to go. We got to get out of here. We can't spend the night.
Well, they could always donate their room to me, and I will spend the night there in their absence.
In their absence, yeah. So I know you always ask me how much is based on
Yes.
on real stuff, and a lot of it is actually. These are a lot of the reports that people give, and there have been. I found 2 different places with different people. One a supervisor and one a tour guide that talk about how, people just leave in the middle of the night. They don't stay. They can't handle it. And others who are like, yeah, I stayed there and these things happened to me and, it was fine, but it was creepy.
Well, you know what? I think we should take a break, and then when we return, we will go over the history and find out if there's any reason that might be happening.
Sounds good.
Hi, I'm MF Thomas, the creator and host of the My Dark Path podcast. In every episode, I explore the fringes of history, science, and the paranormal based on my travels around the world. Episodes include a haunted hotel in Taiwan, murders in a home designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, UFO encounters in New England, and how the story of Frankenstein inspired the inventor of the pacemaker. So, if you geek out over these topics, you're among friends at My Dark Path. Listen on any podcast platform, visit mydarkpath.com, or see our episodes on YouTube. Thanks for listening and walking the dark paths of the world with me.
Pats, facts, from a skeptic point of view. Pats, facts, he presents it all to you. Pats, facts, facts.
All right, so you ready for the Pat Facts?
Pat facts.
Okay, so the Myrtles Plantation is located 26 miles north of Baton Rouge and 98 miles northwest of New Orleans. I'm not even going to round. I'm not even going to say like 25 miles from Baton Rouge and 100 miles from. No, those are the numbers I got.
Those are the numbers. All right.
Although Myrtles Plantation is located in Louisiana, the story doesn't start there, Rebecca.
Ooh, okay.
In 1762, David Bradford was born in what was called Washington County, which is now part of Pennsylvania, oddly enough.
Okay.
There's not much known of his early life, but in 1782, he was the 6th attorney to be admitted to the Washington County Bar Association. He was known as a brilliant young lawyer, and he quickly established a very successful practice.
All right.
He had a lot of family connections, so that made politics something kind of easy for him to get into.
I think a lot of times people like lawyers and politics, there's a lot of, because I think you got to run for like district attorney or that kind of thing. So a lot of connection between those.
So in 1791, he became more and more absorbed in the escalating protest over a whiskey tax, which had been levied by the federal government. This led to a whiskey rebellion, which was an insurrection that was caused by a lot of different factors, including the lack of federal courts, which you wouldn't even think of, but people would have to be moved to Philadelphia for trials.
Oh, wow.
No matter where they were in Pennsylvania. So, or in that surrounding area too. So when people would protest paying this tax, they would be taken from their families and moved to Philadelphia to await their trial, which could literally take months. And back in those days, being away from your family that long would mean that even if you were innocent, you would probably lose every single thing that you ever owned.
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, that's possible today.
It is, but now hopefully you get a trial a little bit faster.
Yeah.
This is all, you could be totally innocent. Everybody could know it, but you go down there and you have to wait for your trial.
Yeah, well,
And
we have
you're
our whole
incarcerated
system
during
with
that.
bail and all that stuff. But again,
Absolutely.
we're working on the ghost story. Let's or the history here. Keep going.
So President George Washington ordered 13,000 troops to Washington, Pennsylvania area as the first test of the power of the new government. When the militias arrived, they began arresting suspected rebels. Among those who had warrants out for their arrest was Bradford.
Wow. I mean, it's so interesting to think that they were considered rebels. They were because they were protesting and refusing to pay a tax. But I guess this was the time for the federal government to start saying, well, we have the right to do that.
Yeah, and whiskey consumption actually was at a high at that point because after the Revolution, they needed something to do now. So they were drinking a lot of whiskey, and therefore Washington thought this would be a great way to help pay back the Revolutionary War.
Sure.
So he started taxing people a lot. And of course, in those days, people hated the idea of someone taxing them.
Yeah. I mean, I think they still do. But yeah, that was the whole point of
exactly.
Revolutionary War, right?
Yeah, so there is a documented fictitious story of Bradford's escape. But it probably was more that he was just tipped off well in advance that they were coming for him. He didn't want to leave, but he did, and he eventually made his way down to Spanish West Florida, which we now call New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
In 1797, Bradford completed work on a home on 600 acres of land. He didn't bring his wife, Elizabeth, and his 5 children to the plantation right away because, of course, there was warrants out for him. So he lived there alone until President John Adams pardoned him in 1799.
Now, was that considered the United States at that point?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
That's why it was Spanish.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Spanish West Florida.
Okay.
No, it was definitely not. So the house that he made was called the Laurel Grove, but it was nicknamed the Whiskey Dave.
Okay, sure.
Bradford died in 1808, and Elizabeth continued to run the plantation for another 9 years. She gave the house and all of its slaves to Clark Woodruff, who married the Bradford's daughter, Sarah Matilda. The Woodruffs had 3 children, Africa Gale, James, and Mary Octavia. Before Sarah Matilda and 2 of her 3 children died in 1823 and 1824 of yellow fever. So Clark...
By the way, remember that particular fact for later on when we're talking about the ghost legends. I'm going to remember. The whole thing is super important.
I totally remember this.
Yes.
So I'm ready for you, Rebecca.
Oh, I think I'm ready for you.
Okay. Clark Woodruff and his 1 surviving daughter left the plantation in 1831. So 7 years after, and had a caretaker look over the plantation. Shortly after that, Clark sold the plantation and its slaves to Ruffin Gray Sterling. What a name. And his wife, Mary Catherine Cobb, who did major remodeling of the house. So much so that they almost doubled the size of the dwelling. And they brought in a bunch of European furniture and made it look all fancy. During that time is when it became known as the Myrtles Plantation because of the crepe myrtles that grew in that area, which is a flower.
Okay.
Sterling died in 1854 and left the plantation to his wife. Now, during the Civil War, a lot of these plantation houses were robbed of all of their possessions when the owners were away, maybe fighting in the Civil War. This was true of Myrtles Plantation, too. In 1865, Mary Cobb Sterling hired William Drew Winter to help manage the plantation as her lawyer and agent. I'm sure you're going to tell them to remember that name, too, right?
Yes, that
Yes.
name is going to come up for sure.
So Winter was married to Sterling's daughter, Sarah, and they went on to have 6 children, one of whom, Kate Winter, died from typhoid at the age of 3. The family fortune was lost in the aftermath of the war due to it being tied up in Confederate currency.
I'm sure also because they didn't have any slave-free labor to do all their work for them anymore.
I mean, probably, yeah. And the Winters were forced to sell the plantation in 1868, but were able to buy it back just 2 years later.
Okay.
In 1871, William Winter was killed on the porch of the house, possibly by a man named E.S. Weber. Sarah remained at Myrtles with her mother and siblings until 1878. When she died, Mary Cobb Sterling died in 1880, and the plantation passed to her son, Stephen. The plantation was heavily in debt, however, and Stephen sold it in 1886 to Orrin D. Brooks, who in turn sold it in 1889. The plantation changed hands several times until 1891 then, when it was purchased by Harrison Milton Williams.
I need a list of every single person that owned it in all these 2-year period.
It was not formally documented a lot of times during those days.
Yeah.
In the early part of the 20th century, the land surrounding the house was divided among the heirs of Harrison Milton Williams. In the 1950s, the house itself was sold to Marjorie Munson, who apparently noticed odd things happening around the Myrtles, resulting in numerous ghost stories. The plantation went through several more ownership changes in the 1970s before being bought by James and Frances Kerman Myers, who ran the plantation house as a bed and breakfast.
Yep.
During this time, Frances Myers, writing as Frances Kerman, wrote a book about the Myrtles Plantation, naming it as the most haunted house in America. The current owners, John and Tita Moss, continue to open the house for tours and overnight guests. In August 2014, a fire occurred in the historical general store, located just 10 feet from the main house, causing substantial damage. The most severe damage was in the extension of the building constructed in 2008, leaving most of the original structure intact and not harming the house at all.
Now, I read this in one place, so I didn't bring it in as an argument, but there's some people that work there, like there's something that happened that they believe like the ghosts did that prevented the fire from hurting anybody or getting into the original structure.
Well, it's mighty nice of them.
Right? I don't know. I didn't quite understand exactly what it was that they think the ghosts did, but anyways, yeah.
Okay. Listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the Myrtles Plantation continues to be a popular tourist attraction due to its association with paranormal activity and has been featured in many books, magazines, newspapers, and television shows. All the big ones have been there. You know, your boy Zach Baggins has been there.
Ghost Hunters.
And yeah, all of them have been there. And in fact, Unsolved Mysteries was there as well.
They were. And I didn't, again, there's too many stories, but supposedly they had electrical trouble.
They did,
with their equipment. So nowadays they have a fancy new restaurant they've opened.
I saw that.
It's still a bed and breakfast. But I think what disturbed me the most reading the history, especially on like their own website or just even around, like you at least mentioned slaves and that they were sold with the house.
Yes.
Or inherited with the house. Nowhere is that even mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, and like you said earlier, it's just, you know, a big part of it too. I mean, one, obviously, they don't want the place associated with, horrible memories. But also, there just isn't a lot of documentation. You know, it's like it's so interesting to think like, here's the story of this house, right?
Yeah, and I could have went on and talked about the interior and the exterior of the house.
Sure.
Because there was 22 rooms in the house.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
And but to think that there's not also stories of like, and these were some of the slaves that live there, and like what happened in their lives and how they escaped, or like, and I'm sure some of that is probably out there if you really dig for it, but it's not like common to find as like just part of the history of this house.
No.
And that's so sad. And it just makes me like, I've always felt this way, and I'm still there, and I'm sure it's a beautiful place, but I just can't imagine like staying there. Like taking a tour would be interesting, I suppose, but it depends on how they do the tour.
Yeah.
And what kind of real information they're gonna share.
I mean, I will tell you this. I mean, first of all, people were ashamed of what they did, I think.
Somewhere.
And so therefore, there wouldn't be documentation of it. But another reason why is because slave owners considered their slaves to be less than human.
Oh, yeah.
Because they couldn't do what they did if they thought of them as human beings like them.
Absolutely.
So they thought of them like they would think of cattle.
Yep.
Or something like that. They were expendable.
Mm-hmm.
They were purchased and expendable to them.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that this all happened at the Myrtles Plantation. As I said, they could have been super nice to the slaves there. Although I'm sure you're going to have some stories in the ghost story part.
Not necessarily, actually, to be honest. But right, we don't. But again, right, they wouldn't necessarily document. Like here's the horrible. I mean, maybe they have. I'm sure they have maybe punishment records or things like that they kept. But I think you're probably right too. With all with the Civil War and all the things that were going on, it's like, well, we're gonna maybe get rid of this, or it was just lost to history. Like, why would you keep all of that? Sure.
Especially when the house exchanged hands
so many times.
Yeah, and people didn't really realize that this was going to be a part of history and that they need to archive that stuff.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of different factors that play into that. But no, with a lot of these plantation houses, you're not going to find much documentation. I mean, I've been in a plantation house before. I used to know someone that owned a plantation house.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful. It was actually small for what I would have imagined a plantation house to be.
Right.
And this was in New Orleans.
Okay.
In a there's like a little not an island, but like a peninsula or an isle or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's off of New Orleans.
Okay.
That's where they owned it. And again, as I said, I don't know. There was multiple floors, but there wasn't that many bedrooms, and it was, the rooms were smaller than they are in a modern day house.
Mm-hmm.
Like your living room wasn't like humongous like it is in some houses nowadays.
Yeah.
So anyways, but there was probably a lot of bad things that happened in that house.
Yeah, definitely. So it just was jarring to read it and then be like, yep, nope, we just didn't. Yeah, I guess we're just not going to talk about any of that, are we?
Yeah. But even in the best case scenario, slavery in all of its forms was totally bad.
Yeah, I think I hope we can all agree on that part.
Even if the slaves got along with the family.
Yeah.
They were kept from pursuing their dreams.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyways, enough of that. When we return, we will get to the debate.
Let's do it. Pat, what do creepy stories, funny ghost memes, and inside ghostly information have in common?
My life.
Well, yes, but no, it's also Ghostly Society on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that too, of course. But aren't all ghostly listeners in Ghostly Society?
Not yet.
What? I mean, that means that they're missing out on all my jokes.
Yeah, they are. And missing out on chatting and sharing with other listeners and us, of course.
We love talking to our listeners. If you haven't yet, you should consider joining our private group on Facebook called Ghostly Society.
Let's hope now they will.
Unless They're a woman in white.
Uh-oh.
All right, it's time for a debate.
It is. All right. So I know that I say this a lot lately, but there are so many ghost stories for this place. But what's actually really difficult to do is pick out fact from fiction when it comes to the legends told about this place. So I'm going to start off by sharing some of the legends, and we'll talk about what's true and what isn't true, or I'm sure Pat's going to say that none of it's true, just in different ways. But then we'll dive into the real evidence. So this first part here is going to be a little bit longer, but then we'll kind of make our way through the evidence here. The first thing that I want to debunk is that there is a ghost that people claim reportedly like walks, staggers, or crawls up the stairs and stops on the 17th step. And they believe it is, as you pointed out when we went through the history, William Drew Winter, who is the victim of the only verified murder in the house, right? So you will hear stories of Confederate soldiers that died, or like whatever other. We're going to hear a story of another murder here in a minute, but it's the only verified murder, and that he basically was shot on the front porch and then, according to the legend, staggered or crawled up the stairs, and then collapsed dead on the 17th step. Alternate versions of his murder claim he managed to crawl up the stairs and collapsed into his wife's arms on the 17th step. But basically, there is zero proof of any of that. In fact, the records at the time say that he died immediately after being shot. So now, does that mean that there aren't footsteps on the stairs? Does that mean that there aren't, ghosty sounds? No. But it does mean that they are not William Drew Winter. Possibly the next most well-known, or the most well-known story, I really should say, of Myrtle's supposed ghosts is Chloe.
Mm-hmm.
This is the story you will absolutely hear if you go on a tour at the Myrtles Plantation. So Chloe was reportedly a slave, or a version of this you'll hear. Reportedly a slave owned by Clark and Sarah Woodruff. According to one story, Clark Woodruff had pressured or forced Chloe into being his mistress. Other versions have Chloe listening at keyholes to learn news of their business dealings. Or one I read was that she wanted to do better so they wouldn't punish her so much. So she was listening at keyholes. And then they say that after being caught, either by Clark or Sarah, they cut off one of her ears. And so she wore a green turban to hide this horrible punishment. Chloe then supposedly baked a cake for the daughters, or one of the two daughters. And in that cake, she put an extract of boiled and reduced oleander leaves, which are extremely poisonous. The reason that she did that was to get back to work inside the house, because obviously that was, oftentimes you hear stories, that working in the house was easier a little bit than working out in the fields. I don't know, a maid who was getting the favor of the mistress was a suspect, with some saying she was getting revenge on the Woodruffs, some saying she was attempting to redeem her position by curing the family of the poisoning. I don't know, whatever. So she didn't necessarily, in this legend, want to kill the wife or the daughters, just wanted them to get sick and then she could go work in the house. But according to the legend, her plan backfired. Only Sarah and her 2 daughters ate the cake and all died from the poison. Chloe was then supposedly hanged by other slaves and thrown into the Mississippi River, either as punishment or to escape punishment by Clark Woodruff for harboring her. But the historical record does not support basically anything in this story.
Well, I heard it a little bit different too.
Yeah, tell me your version.
Is that Clark liked to get a little frisky with his
yes,
slaves.
that is also a story.
Yeah,
yes.
and so she went along with it because she knew that this would be, or Chloe went along with it because she knew it would be easier.
And she also didn't really have a choice. But,
and eventually she stopped and he cut off her ear.
Oh, okay.
And then, so this was a revenge act.
A revenge act.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, there's no record of the Woodruffs owning a slave named Chloe. They literally, the one article I read said that they had looked through all the records of every slave name and there was no Chloe. Now, of course, that name could have been changed, I suppose, if this was a real story, but it's not, because the legend also usually claims that Sarah and her 2 daughters were poisoned, but Mary Octavia survived well into adulthood. Finally, Sarah James and Cornelia Woodruff were not killed by poisoning, but instead, as Pat told us earlier, had yellow fever. It also kind of implied, or I think it's that Sarah was pregnant. She must have been pregnant or something like that when she was killed, because there was no 3rd kid, but there was a 3rd kid. So again, just so many factual things that were wrong with that story. But regardless of the factual accuracy of the Chloe story, some believe that a woman wearing a green turban does haunt the plantation.
Yeah, a green beret.
Well, I've never read a beret. I only ever read a turban or
That's
a
what they
scarf.
say. It's a green beret too.
Interesting.
Anyways, so to go over some of the legend here.
Right.
It all started with Munson in 1950s. So she heard some of the local stories that had gotten started, and these were all just like they had no basis in facts at all. And she developed the idea of Chloe, and she also developed the idea of Winters dying on the 17th stair in his beloved wife's arms. And she penned a song about the ghost of Myrtles, a woman in the green beret. So where this all starts from, though, is according to the granddaughter of Harrison and Fannie Williams, Lucille Lawrison, her aunts used to talk about the ghost of an old woman who haunted the Myrtles and who wore a green bonnet. They often laughed about it, and it became a family joke.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not based upon anything. It was a joke. And she had heard the story. Munson had heard the story from the locals and decided it was all true, turned it into a song. And then the story grew and changed, and the Myrtles changed hands several times. And so a lot of them didn't know what to think of it. But that's when, in 1970, it became that they were poisoned, and the severed ear. And up until this point, it was largely just a story that it was passed on by word of mouth, and it received little attention outside of that area. But when Frances Kerman Myers passed through on a riverboat, she decided that they should buy that house because she was hearing from the locals some of the stories. So this is all just based upon what Munson said and what Kerman wrote.
Mm-hmm.
None of this is based upon any real events that occurred.
Well, so a lot of that are things that I found. Yes, that is all true. There is a story, that that Lucille found that her aunts used to talk about the ghost of an old woman who wore the green hat.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that they necessarily thought of it as a made up story. It was just a story that people had told and people had seen things. But this particular ghost was described as an older woman, not a young girl, not a young slave.
Yep.
And never anything about her being in an affair, anything like that. And then, yes, Marjorie Munson did, make a song about it, and it was definitely something that people talked about. But Frances Myers did, in fact, claim that she herself encountered this ghost in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
She said she was asleep in one of the downstairs bedrooms, and she was suddenly awoken by a black woman wearing a green turban and a long dress. She was standing silently by the bed, holding a candlestick in her hand. So Frances said she was so real that the candle even gave off a soft glow. Knowing nothing about ghosts, she says, she was terrified, pulled the covers over her head and started screaming. Then she slowly peeked out and reached out a hand to touch the woman who had never moved, and to her amazement, the apparition vanished.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm thinking is that the stories, the legend, that was, a lot of it was made up.
Yes.
And it taints the evidence then. And by telling whoever it was that you said had the sighting, they're on the lookout for that. They're prepared for that. She was waking up from a dream. And a lot of times, as we've kind of talked about on Ghostly, sometimes these things happen when you're just waking up. That really makes me think that it was just half dream, half awake kind of thing. And that's why it disappeared. Once she reached out her hand, so she moved and she was more aware of herself and she woke up more.
I don't know. She says she covered her head and, screamed. And then when she looked, that to me is like the most terrifying story. The concept of like you see a ghost and then when you look back, it's still there.
You can't have ghost stories that are half lies and half truths and then believe it at face value.
Well, so here's my thought on it. My take on it is that there is a ghost that's there that has a green hat of some sort. And that spirit has been around for a lot of years, but that, no one knows the backstory of this person. And so at some point, somebody made one up, maybe in writing the song or whatever it was, they kind of made up this story. And it is difficult because it does taint the story and the evidence. But to me, even if this woman with the green bonnet isn't Chloe, still could be a ghost that's there. Though there aren't a ton of stories. There's a ton of stories about the children ghosts, but the woman with the green turban, not as many.
Yeah.
So
that's why I'm thinking that it's got to be just this person saying that. And, it's like if you're on the lookout for something, you're more likely to see something like that. And, especially just waking up from a dream. I'm going to rate this really low. I'm going to go 0 on this one.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 5.
Okay.
Because it's not Chloe.
That's pretty low for you.
But yeah, I'm a little, trust me, there's plenty of other evidence out there. Everybody don't worry.
Okay.
I'm
worried.
This one, I'm not as sure about the woman in the green hat just because it has been tainted by these other stories. But I just find it interesting that basically there's a lot of the websites you're going to go to, and the story that we just shared about Chloe is the story that you're going to read, like as fact. And that is also the story that you will read on their own website. But it is, again, pretty easy to disprove without having to do a whole lot of research.
I had to look hard for that one. And eventually the stuff that I am reporting comes from actually American Haunting AmericanHauntingsInc.com.
Yes, that's the same one of the same ones I found. I found some others
Yeah.
too, but I think that one is Troy Taylor. I'm not sure. I know he was one of the ones who debunked it.
And by the way, these people do go on to say that they believe that there is a ghost, just
Yes.
not the ones that we are saying that they are.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I say that that's a little bit more credible
Mhm.
because they are showing that they did their research. They're a little bit more skeptical about it.
Right.
And at the end, that's what their conclusion is. My conclusion is different
Yes.
so far, but we'll see.
We'll see. But yeah, well, definitely, I'm going to put the number of websites I found researching this, and I'm sure Pat did as well, is a lot. So, I mean, there's actually a whole Wikipedia page just for these legends. Just to show that and kind of the debunking them. All right, so let's move on to our next piece of evidence here, and we're going to talk about those photos that I did in fact share with you, Pat, and you said that you did look at.
What photos?
Yes.
I'm just teasing.
So there are actually a lot of photos. I mean, I will be putting some links and you can look at more photos, but there are two that are the famous photos. And these are the ones, again, that are on the plantation website itself. So I want to talk about those two. So let's talk about the first one. And that is the plantation says is a photo of Chloe. So but we know that it's not. But this is a photo taken in 1992 for insurance purposes. It was taken outside, and it kind of shows two buildings with like a little walkway between them. And basically after they submitted, they were new owners. They submitted the photos for the insurance company. The insurance company wrote back and said, hey, we can't use these photos because they have a person in them. And the owner said, nope, there's no people. We didn't have any people in there when we took the photo. So then they went and looked at the photo. And when you look, there is a shadowy figure that you can see between the two buildings. And they felt that it looked like a young girl. And so because of the Chloe legend, they'll say it's Chloe. Obviously, I don't necessarily think that there is somebody named Chloe, so it's not her, but it is, in my mind, a ghosty, shadowy figure.
So, yeah, looking at the picture, this is oddly graphic picture of a little girl. Although, like when I looked at the zoomed out picture, so they have a zoomed out picture and then they have the zoomed in picture.
Yes.
The zoomed out picture, I can't make that out. I can't see that particular shape that they are showing, even though I saw the close up and they circle it, In the close up, I can totally see it, but in the far away one, I can't see it.
Oh,
so
I can.
I mean, I tried. I gave it, a good couple of minutes. I couldn't dwell upon this too long, but I will tell you that photographs are difficult because you never know the circumstances of the photograph. You never know exactly how it was taken, when it was taken, what conditions the area was in at the time. And I just feel that the close-up, maybe they use some kind of enhancement and I'm 100% positive they use some kind of enhancement on it. And that enhancement made it look more like that there is a figure of a girl there. Photographs are really, really tough to either debunk or prove that they're real even because of that, because it's one moment in time. You have no idea. There could have been a little girl in the window at that time that we don't know.
Well, this is not in the window. That's a different one.
Oh, you're talking about the black and white ones.
I am talking. Yes, this is the one that said it's two buildings and it's a girl in between the two buildings.
So that one I could not make out anything necessarily.
Okay.
So to me, it didn't look like anything. So that one, but again, you don't know what was happening at this particular moment. It could have been a shadow of an actual person. We don't know for sure. And I'm sorry, it's just photo. I mean, people are going to say, when there's no photos, that I say that there's no photos, and when there is photos, then I say, well, I can't tell. But I'm just saying that this adds to its credibility slightly. But to me, I still don't know the circumstances. If I'm not the one taking the photo, and even if I am the one taking the photo, I would have to be suspicious of the camera itself too. I would have to look at the before pictures, after pictures. I don't know. There's just a lot to it.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is the Myrtle, and I didn't read this anywhere else that I could find, but the Myrtles Plantation website itself claims that a National Geographic Explorer filming crew looked at the photo and determined that it definitely contained what appeared to be an apparition of what they believed to be a slave girl.
They definitely what they believe. There's a couple words in there that are contrary to each other.
A little bit, but they said the horizontal exterior boards of the mansion were clearly visible through the body of the apparition. They used the photo in their documentary, and they suggested that they make a postcard of it. So I don't know, but you can definitely see the photos on the website, and actually, if you just scroll down in the notes, I'll have them there. And it does look to me like a shadow of a person. It's kind of right by the pillar,
and maybe it is. Who knows?
Yeah,
it could have actually been a shadow of a person.
No, it's again not a person, a ghost, because there were no people there when they were taking these photos.
Yeah, that's what they always say, but we don't know. We weren't there. We weren't there. We have no idea the conditions
even
of this photo.
If I had been there, I guess like theoretically there could have been something, but it doesn't look like it.
Okay.
All right. So what's your rating?
I'm gonna have to go 1 on this one, only because, again, I don't have enough information because I wasn't the one that took the photo. I don't have the camera that it was taken with. I can't test it on other things, and I'm not there to be able to actually try to simulate this picture under different conditions.
Okay. This one I'm giving a 7 to.
Of course you are.
I am. It's super freaky.
Okay.
All right, but again, I don't think it's Chloe.
Yeah.
Okay. The second famous photo is, I think, the one that you were thinking about in the beginning there is, again, it's on their website. It's of a little girl's face in a window.
Mm-hmm.
So it's they're outside, the photographer is outside the house taking a photo of the house, and in the window, looking out from inside is what looks like the face of a little girl. There are also other very similar photos to this that other people have taken that have a face of a young girl, not Chloe, like it's a different face. But this is the most famous one and the one that's shared by the plantation. So I think it's a good representative of that. So what do you think of that one?
Yeah, again, I can't, like in the zoomed out picture, it's hard for me to see that particular shape that they are showing. The zoomed in picture, very easy because they circle it, make it really clear. The one thing I will say, the curtains have a weird pattern to them, and the pattern is on the girl face. Mm-hmm. So that makes me a little bit uncomfortable with that. Again, this is, the picture and frozen in time, and humans make cameras. They're not perfect. I mean, they're perfect for the exact thing that they do at the exact second that they do it. Mm-hmm. And that it's hard for me to say that somebody wasn't actually there, or if it's just, there's a stain in the curtain that looks like the shit, but it looks oddly like a little girl with like chubby cheeks too. Mm-hmm. It's one thing that I noticed in that. And out of all the pictures that you've shown me, this one is the most that I've ever seen a actual shape of a person.
Yeah, and this particular girl is one that again is seen in other photos as well. Now,
I wonder if it's in the exact same location.
No, it's
every
not,
single time.
Actually.
Okay,
it is not. I forget her name. I'm so sorry, but it's one of the daughters of
Okay.
somebody, like her painting is in the house. So when you kind of compare her to the painting, it's similar. So again, according to the Myrtles Plantation website, the image was taken by a teacher and some of her students in the courtyard. So the plantation sent it to Dave Young of Paladin Paranormal for his opinion. So he's a supporter of the plantation, he said, and he was amazed at what he found, and he sent it to the Society of Psychical Research in England.
Yeah.
So the photo,
Yeah, we talked about them in some episodes.
I knew that sounded familiar.
I thought it was cyclical.
Sure, because sure.
Okay.
I don't know. It was taken with a Sony CyberShot DSC P9 3A camera. And then
which by the way is a lower resolution than your cell phones would be right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming this is an older picture.
This is like in the 90s. It sounds like.
Right.
So it's less resolution than your camera phones are, and your camera phones can pick up a bunch of weird stuff too. Just to point that part out.
Sure.
You know.
And then it says, without going into the technical explanation, that included megapixel capability, file size.
That's what I was just kind of saying.
Yeah, GIF file, compression system, shutter speed, aperture setting, ISO speed setting, and the focal length of the lens. Let me confirm that nothing at all unusual was discovered or reported about the photograph or the manner in which it was developed, is basically what Dave said, I guess. So, again, it's still around. People still research it.
Yeah. It is a really good picture.
Yeah.
I can't explain exactly why, but again, I wasn't there. I didn't take the picture. I wasn't there to see the circumstances. I wasn't there to see it with my naked eye first. When it was zoomed out, I could not see that particular thing until I saw the zoomed in picture. Then it's like super obvious, but weird because the curtain pattern is on her body and her face.
Because she is transparent. If
No,
it was a real person,
but
that wouldn't be the case.
It doesn't look like that, though. It doesn't look like it's, I don't know. You have to really look at the picture. I think it's an incredible photo. But again, it was taken with a camera that has low megapixels, and it just doesn't have the resolution of even the worst camera phone nowadays. And so there is a digital processing that happens when one of those photos are taken too. And if the camera was on portrait mode, let's say, which in that particular case it would be because there were two people in front that they black out the faces, it would be in portrait mode probably, and it's looking for other people in the picture. So I don't know. That's all I have to go by. That's all I can suggest. I can't tell you 100%, but I can say I'm fairly confident that it's something to do with the camera, and it's something to do with the exact time that it was taken.
Okay. I mean, so they do list comments that they've received about the photo that say from these people trying to look at it. Things like, I see no reason why this type of camera should in any way be responsible for this strange phenomenon.
I do. I mean, I see reasons why. That I mean, seriously, it would. It's the start of the digital camera phase, and those cameras were less than 35 millimeter cameras. 35 millimeter cameras have their flaws too, like the red-eyed photos and stuff like that, and a bunch of other things. Overexposure. They were worse than these cameras. So there's more problems that could occur with it. But just saying.
Okay. Much more interesting than the average paranormal photo we generally receive.
Yes, it is. I agreed with that.
Yeah. And then we'll put this in the difficult to explain category, at least for now, as I try to gain more information. So again, these are quotes from people that are, they sent it to look at. All right. So what's your rating after all of this? For this photo.
For this one, I'm going to give it a 2 just because I will acknowledge seeing a little girl in that picture, but I don't know the circumstances again, so I can't give it a full on, 10 or anything. So
Yeah. I'm going to give this one, I'm going to give it an 8 just because there is so much, so many people have looked at it and they can't seem to figure it out. I don't know. It's interesting. Okay, let's move on to our next piece of evidence. We're almost done there. There's so many. Again, I have to kind of pick and choose, but we're going to keep going with the children theme.
okay.
So again, there are many reports that I found from investigators, bloggers, visitors that talk about hearing and sometimes seeing in photographs, which we just talked about, children around the property. Even staff will say this. So I found a story that I thought would be something we could talk about. A blogger who stayed there shared this story. While serving myself breakfast, she was doing the bread and breakfast, right? I made small talk with one of the cooks, asking him if he has ever seen or had a haunted experience in the house. And he says, quote, "The other day while I was mopping, children's footprints began to run through the moisture on the floor. He recalled this, she said, without a hint of surprise. I asked him if he was shocked. He said, nah, you get them a lot. I just let them know that I would be closing the door when I was done so they'd have a chance to get out before I locked up." Again, there are a lot of stories like this from staff, from visitors, but this was a real specific one. So we're going to use this one today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the one thing I can say that makes me like a red flag in this would be, and there's going to be a red flag in every single thing, right? So I'm just saying this is a red flag. This is something that draws my attention, is that this is told by somebody that heard it from somebody else, right? So I never like those kind of things because interpretation, it could be a matter of a word misspoken or a word misunderstood that changes the whole context of everything. So I never like that. As far as the mopping and then there was children's footprints, I don't know exactly what this is. I know that this is a really old place, old foundation. I'm wondering if there's something that is there in the flooring that might cause that. I don't know. That's an instinct that I have, would be to look at that. But I don't know. I mean, just I'm trying to reread it as I'm talking here. I like that the guy was like, I'm going to close the door in a little bit.
Yeah.
Give him a chance to get out.
Again, he's just used to, this is what you hear from people that one quote that I heard from a staff was that they know within a month if people are going to make it because the ghosts, I guess. So here's the thing. Again, a lot of these ghosts are not necessarily malicious, supposedly. So I will say a lot of the land where the slaves lived has been sold off and is not a part of the house. But, still a lot of slavery and a lot of bad things going on in that house. But
yeah,
everyone says that the spirits, no, I read no reports that said they were scary.
Yeah.
Other than obviously people might be just in general frightened, but again, nothing bad happened to anybody. But that when a staff starts, it appears like the spirits kind of come out of the woodwork and almost are hazing them. And that if they still are working there within a month or two, then they calm it down a little bit. You don't see them or experience them as much, and they know that you're a part of the crew. Now, that was just one person saying that, but then this guy tells this story where he's just like, nah, I see them all the time. They're fine. They're just there and they're running around and doing their thing, and you just learn to live with them in this house. Yeah,
I mean, another thing is that there are kids that are going to be in the place, so it's not unlikely that there could be kids. It is unlikely the location, but I wonder Also, what part of the house this was in?
The kitchen, I think.
But I wonder what part that's in, because like that would put a time to me, then I would be able to say that this could be this kid or this could be that kid.
Sure.
It's way too vague for this one.
Okay.
And again, story told by somebody that was told to them. When we go into restaurants, I always ask them, "Is this place haunted?" Mm-hmm. And we'll always hear something.
Yes.
It's rare that we will hear somebody say absolutely nothing.
Well, we've had some people say, yeah, others that work here say they've experienced things, but I haven't.
Yeah, and
We'll get
that's
that
pretty
sometimes.
common.
Yeah.
You know, I think they're being honest. And but anyways, I so I'm just gonna say I'm gonna have to give this one a 0 just because of how vague it is to me, that I can't be able to do any further research into this one.
All right. I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay.
Again, it's just representative of people seeing these ghost kids. And all right. So last one I picked, again, so hard to pick. But I went with ghost hunters again.
Okay.
So here they are. Brian and Steve in this episode share footage of a human-shaped shadow that appears to be outside the front entrance of the main house. But when they researched it, they thought, nope, this could just be a person. So they kind of, took that and said, no, it's okay. But there was footage that they took inside the slave shack with the lead investigators. And it showed a lamp slowly slide on its own across the table. They are unsure of what caused it to move. So then later on in the episode, they try moving the lamp themselves, but notice that when it moves, it also moves the tablecloth underneath it, something that doesn't happen in the video. So now here's the thing. They also, and I'm sorry because I forgot I was going to give you this back with the photo of the girl, that Ghost Hunters actually believes it's that thing that makes you think you see faces, that I can never remember the name. So they actually did not believe the girl photo, the in the window, but the lamp moving and other things that they saw and heard make them conclude that there is enough paranormal activity to call Myrtles Plantation one of the most haunted places in America.
So, first of all, the red flag in this one is that it was Ghost Hunters. It was one of these shows that get paid for this kind of stuff, and that's fine. Like, I love the entertainment value of these kind of things. But another thing that caught my attention is you said that they noticed that the tablecloth moved underneath it when the lamp moved.
Right. So when they try to do it themselves.
I know, but that's what I'm saying, though, is the tablecloth moved. So if I was to move the tablecloth on this table, things are going to come with it. And you don't need to be right at the source then. I think it could be some kind of trickery that they're doing for that.
But in the footage, it shows the lamp moving without the tablecloth moving. And so that's why they think it was a ghostly paranormal thing that the lamp that moved.
But you said that the tablecloth moved when the lamp was moving on its own.
No, it's the opposite. So when they were filming, they found footage that showed the lamp slowly slide on its own across the table. No one was doing it. So then when they went to try to debunk it, when they just like grabbed and pulled the lamp themselves, the tablecloth moved with it.
So Houdini used to do a lot of these, seances, right, to show people that they were fake. And a lot of times they would use magnets underneath the table to move stuff like this. This is a bigger object than what I think Houdini actually did it with a huge candle holder thing. So probably the weight would be less than that even. So magnets can do it. And if you're producing a TV show, they always find something in these things. So I'm just going to say, I think this is smoke and mirrors for this one.
All right. So what's your rating?
0.
All right. I give this one a 7. because they're pretty good about debunking the things that aren't real and then the things that they think they have some more evidence for. So
but in every episode, they always have at least one thing. Do they ever leave a place and say, this place is not haunted at all?
Oh, I think so. I mean, they
I've
probably just
never
don't make
seen-
episodes of those too much then because, that's not very fun. But, Tabs does good stuff.
Okay, sure they do. I mean, look, I find the entertainment value of it great. I love that kind of suspense. I love that kind of feeling, but I just see it as entertainment value. So, okay, Rebecca, what are your overall ratings then?
So my overall rating is a 7 then.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That seems like to factor in pretty good.
It's in the middle there. How about you?
Mine would be a 1.
Okay, that's pretty high for you.
Well, I mean, I can't really round up, so if I had to,
you had
go
a 2
over,
in there.
Yeah, and if I had to average it all out over the 5 pieces of evidence that you presented to me, which was more than just 5 in those, but I would say that it would probably be a 0.75. So I'm just going to say 1 then.
Okay.
All right, that brings us to the closing arguments. This is our last chance to convince you to vote our way. We are each given 1 minute of uninterrupted time because we all know that Rebecca likes to cheat at this particular time. So we will time each other on our cell phones.
I deserve better credit than this.
I've proven that you cheated in one episode.
Yeah, one episode where we were having some fun.
Fun to you, it wasn't fun to me, okay?
Oh, it was super fun.
All right, Rebecca, are you ready?
Yes.
And go.
All right. So the Myrtles Plantation has a hard history, but it has ghosts, and they're not necessarily bad ghosts, but they're ghosts, and it's not the stories that the plantation wants to tell you. But that doesn't matter. There's still ghosts there. They're just, they're trying to make some interesting stories to help explain the ghosts, but there doesn't always have to be an explanation specifically. There were children that died in the house. They weren't murdered by a cake, poisoned cake, but they did die. And really they're everywhere. There's photos of them in the windows. There's, stories of them running around the house. And I couldn't believe, how many stories there were. It's haunted.
All right. Wow, you went right to the second.
I did.
There.
I mean, it's so hard to keep myself to just the 5 pieces of evidence that I was allowed to choose, but it does start to get repetitive if we do too many. So
yeah, I mean, we could go on all day, and these episodes could be 8 hours long.
Here's another picture of a girl in the window.
Yeah,
and here's
exactly.
another story of someone getting tickled. Okay, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, and go.
So my first issue with this place is that there's too many legends. There's too many of these folklore things of Chloe and of Winter dying on the 17th stair, and that people hear footsteps going up, like he's making. I don't even understand why he would try to go up to the 17th stair. But anyways, these are not true. And when there's all these falsehoods, how do you draw the line and say, this is real and this is not? There could still be falsehoods today. Another thing that I wanted to say is that this was coined one of the most haunted places by somebody that had a vested interest in it, that owned the property, that was selling it out as a paranormal location. Enough said. This place is not haunted at all.
Wow. Wonderful use of the word falsehood.
Yeah, I like falsehood.
That's an old
It's a farce.
word.
It's a farce. All right, so I want to thank everyone so much for listening. Please share us with your friends and family, as word of mouth is our best form of advertisement, and we truly mean that. That's where we get most of our people. We got some live shows coming up. We'll talk about that probably in our next episode, although we do have the Paracon coming up.
We do. We've got a lot going on coming up. Yeah, so next weekend, the 26th, I believe, or 20.
Yeah, the 26th.
26th, we'll be at Paracon. And then next month, we've got Fan Expo.
Yeah.
We're going to be there the 9th and the 10th. And then Parapalooza is coming on the 23rd of July.
Yeah, and we just got approved for C2E2. We just don't know the date yet.
We did, but that's going to be in August. So all summer long. And you know what? We have an events page on ghostlypodcast.com.
Yeah, I will keep it updated with all the information. So I want to bring attention to some of the most important people in Ghostly is our producers, right? Our VIP patrons.
You got it.
They help us. And, I don't just say this. We actually talk about show ideas with some of them. And, we get opinions about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So especially during our Ghostly AMAs, that's a great time for people to, say what they feel. And we always take their advice to heart.
Absolutely.
So the first one is Carrie,
Becky,
Natalie,
Kim,
Ta,
Ernie,
Marisol,
Shayla,
Cindy,
Nicole,
Darnay,
Jessica,
Alice,
Austin,
Aaron,
Hope,
and Candy. So we will be talking about the Pabst Mansion. Pabst Blue Ribbon?
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about that. It's in Milwaukee. It's close by.
Yeah.
I've always been interested in the place. We've actually watched some stuff which talked about Pabst.
Yes.
So I'm really interested to bring that history into light and to find out why it's not haunted at all. But we'll be talking about that July 6th.
You got it. And if you haven't yet, go fill out the listener survey. If you look right now down at your phone and look on the description, if you are listening to this before the beginning of August time frame, it'll be there, and fill that listener survey out, and you could potentially win a free Ghostly t-shirt.
Yeah, and they will be announced in our 100th episode.
Yeah.
Which we are super excited. We've been planning this one.
My gosh.
And we got some ideas to really, really bring it home.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun.
Like, I think we might hit a home run in this one.
It's possible.
Yeah. But until next time, stay ghostly.
Bye.